Sometimes the world seems a lot smaller than it actually is, and we're often really surprised by coincidences. Spanish speakers say the world is a handkerchief. El mundo es un pañuelo. In English, we say, what a small world, or it's a small world. We've got some examples of how small the world can actually be in this episode of
Aprender Inglés con Reza y Craig.
Hello and welcome. My name's Craig.
And my name's Reza.
And with nearly 50 years of teaching between us, Reza and I will help you improve your English and take it to the next level. How are you, Reza?
I'm doing very well, Craig. I'm doing very well. I'm getting used to my Invisalign bits of plastic in my mouth. I wonder, do the listeners pick up on the fact that I got some plastic in my mouth? Can you hear a difference, Craig?
I'm sorry, I can't understand you. Can you repeat that?
I said,
You know, I did not even notice. And Reza arrived at the flat this morning only 5 minutes late, which was really good. And I didn't even notice that he had those on his teeth. So they look amazing. They look really, really good.
Let's hope that I can get people to stare me in the face without wanting to be sick now by the time they do their job.
Yet another advantage of being a podcaster. No one can see us. Today we're going to look at the idea of coincidences, and we have a wonderful message from a longtime friend of the podcast, Jose. But before that, let's listen to a voice message from Esteban from Argentina.
Hi guys, this is Esteban again from Argentina, who came up with the idea of your TV show episode. I'm so grateful that you made an entire episode about it. You know, by the way, my favorite series are Breaking Bad, Game of Thrones, and The Wire. One thing I couldn't help to notice is that you, Craig, refer to a season like series. Is it okay to say it like that? Because I thought series was the whole thing, divided into different seasons. Anyways, Craig, to answer your question about New Zealand, indeed, it was like it. I mean, I'm more of a football kind of person, but many people, the moment they heard I was Argentinian, they started to talk about rugby. A pity I don't know much about it, though. That's all from my side. Please take care and continue with your amazing work. Bye-bye.
Well, thank you, Esteban. It's lovely to get your feedback on that episode. If you want to listen to the episode Reza and I did on TV series, go to inglespodcast.com/382 and we'll give you some recommendations on TV series to watch.
Yes, that was a very good message, Esteban. Your pronunciation was really good. I just noticed one tiny little grammatical point that we could fix. You said you couldn't help to notice, but you should say couldn't help plus an ing verb. So you couldn't help noticing would be the correct form. And what you couldn't help noticing was that Craig used the word series in a way that you didn't know about. Can you remember what you said, Craig?
I can't, but I will probably say that. I know that you're correct, Esteban, when you say that the TV series is the whole thing. So The Wire is a TV series, but there are 4 or 5 seasons in the series. So it has different parts to it.
I think people sometimes do use the word series as if it were seasons. I've heard people say, well, I like the first series of Program X better than the second series. And so they clearly mean temporada, which is season. But I think people do use it that way as well.
Do you?
Sometimes, yeah.
So it's interchangeable, series or seasons. But when you say TV series and the TV comes before series, then it's definitely the whole thing.
Yeah, hold on. You said they're interchangeable. Yeah, if you talk about the different series or seasons, as in the first, the second, the third, or fourth.
Yep.
But you can't talk about the whole thing as a season.
Correct.
That's got to be a series.
Correct.
It's the first, the second, the third season or series, but the whole thing is a series, not a season.
So thank you, Esteban, for pointing that out. I had no idea that I actually said that, so thank you. By the way, I wonder if you know Carla, Esteban, because Carla is also from Argentina and she is working in New Zealand. She's working in a plant nursery. What a coincidence. I wonder if you know her. Speaking of coincidences, and another coincidence, guess the name of the place where Carla's working. It's near Christchurch in New Zealand.
Don't tell me it's called Valencia.
It's called Belfast.
Belfast. Yeah. Wow.
What a coincidence. What a coincidence. So what is a coincidence? Well, according to my dictionary, it's an occasion when two or more similar things happen at the same time, especially in a way that is unlikely and surprising. Can you think of another example?
Well, the fact that you and I are wearing the same T-shirt, what a coincidence. Very nice T-shirts, by the way. They say Inglés Podcast on them.
We like to wear our podcast T-shirts because it puts us in the mood to podcast. We have a voice message from Jose, who has sent us some lovely stories in the past, and any AIRCaholic will know Jose's stories. An AIRCaholic, A-I-R-C, oholic, is Aprender Inglés con Rezi Craig. So any long-time listener will have heard Jose before, and we'll listen to a story that Jose recently sent us about a coincidence.
I've been learning English on my own for many years. Currently, I'm speaking English by Skype with 10 native English speakers. We talk 30 minutes in English and 30 minutes in Spanish. I consider all of them friends because we have been doing it weekly for a long time. Carrie is one of them. She is an American writer of several books and also has a webpage called Ventanas Mexico, dedicated to expats living in Mexico like her. One day in our chat, I was telling her that I had sent an audio recording to La Mansión del Inglés some weeks ago, and eventually they had released it on February 14, 2021, podcast 351. Of course, I spent my English time telling her about the story of this audio recording, which it was about a street seller. When we finished our chat, Carrie went out to see a Mexican friend called Stella for hanging out. In their conversation, Carrie told Stella about my story, and surprisingly, Stella told Carrie, "I listened to this story some days ago." Carrie stayed still for a few seconds, astonished. She couldn't believe the coincidence between an American, a Mexican, and a Spaniard. Carrie didn't know what page I was using, nor even knew Stella was studying English, and much less using this web page as well. I guess that they spent a good time speaking about this coincidence while they were sitting on the terrace of a cafeteria. Shortly after, Carrie returned to the United States to stay there 6 months, and then she flew again to Guadalajara, Mexico, to stay there 6 more months in a small but cute apartment that Stella had rented on behalf of Carrie. Some days ago, in our first chat, once she was settled in Guadalajara, Carrie told me that Stella would come to her apartment a little later. I didn't want to lose the opportunity to meet Stella, So we connected again when both were there. We did it. We three were talking in English on Skype very friendly for some minutes. They are two very different women. Kerry is blonde with blue eyes, and Stella is brunette with dark eyes. But both are very nice, lively, charming, and beautiful women. I promised them that I would send a new audio recording to La Mansión del Inglés telling this coincidence. And here it is. So, I realized that the podcast of La Mansión del Inglés are being listened to more and more all around the world. Congratulations!
Well, thank you very, very much, Jose. It's always a pleasure to get your messages. And I love the way you're being so proactive with your English, not only sending us a message that we can play on the podcast and give you some comments on, but also because you're joining other speakers on Skype to practice your fluency. And I think that's fantastic. So well done on your proactive English studies.
I would say exactly the same as Craig. And I would add that I've noticed over the months, well, if not over the years, really, since Jose's been sending in messages, that he's improving his grammar and vocabulary a lot. He's using really interesting expressions, getting good collocations correct, using interesting grammar patterns, which he didn't 2 or 3 or 4 years ago, but now he is. So there's a definite improvement there.
And one thing that stands out to me, to stand out, is in Spanish sobresale. One thing I notice very much is his descriptive language. When he describes things, he uses very powerful, very descriptive adjectives that are very, very good and well chosen.
Yeah, I think, Jose, you're a naturally good storyteller. You know just exactly how much detail to put in without being excessive. I think you get it just right. You're a natural.
And there were some lovely vocabulary and expressions in your message. For example, a cute apartment. And you said once she was settled in Guadalajara. That's a nice use of to settle. And you said some interesting grammar also, that I had sent, use of past perfect, I had sent an audio recording to La Mansión del Inglés some weeks ago, past simple, and eventually they had released it. So very good grammar and use of tenses.
Yes, you also said that the podcasts of the Mansión del Inglés are being listened to. Being listened to. That's a good passive, present continuous passive. And you remembered, a lot of people would forget, but you remembered to put the word to at the end. So are being listened to more and more all around the world. That's a very impressive use of passive. And remembering to put a preposition when for a Spanish speaker it sounds really weird to put the preposition there, but in English you have to. Well done.
If there is one area I think maybe you should focus on to improve a little, Jose, is your pronunciation. Now, I suspect, and I think Reza agrees with me, that you wrote this story and then you read it when you recorded it. And when people read, sometimes their pronunciation isn't as effective as when they're speaking naturally and fluently. Work a little on your pronunciation. I noticed 2 words specifically, currently, and terrace. So watch those individual vowel sounds.
Also, a couple of more tiny little things, but let's correct them. Let's try and be perfect. You said, I spent my English time telling her about the story of this audio, which it was about to... As soon as I hear which it, I know there's a mistake, because a recording which is going to be, I think, the subject of this relative clause, which was about a street seller. But if you say which it Well, there you've got two subjects together, and you can never have that in English. A subject could be more than one word. It could be like Reza and Craig are podcasters, and the subject is Reza and Craig. Okay, but you can't say Reza and Craig, they. No, you can say they, or you can say Reza and Craig, but you can't have two subjects together.
You used a very nice phrasal verb, Jose. You said to hang out, which is to spend time with people, to informally be in the company of people. You said when we finished our chat, Kerry went out to see a Mexican friend called Estela for hanging out. And I think that's a direct translation from Spanish, para hacer algo. No, you don't need for, you need to. So it's better to say, Kerry went out to see a Mexican friend called Estela to hang out. It's called the infinitive of purpose, and it's the reason we do things. I went there to hang out. I picked up a pen to write something. So don't translate that directly from the Spanish.
There's another little thing that you did, which nearly all my students do, and I'm beginning to worry that I might accept it as correct because I hear it so much from Spanish speakers. You said they spent a good time together. And I can understand why you said that, because the correct collocation is to spend time. Yeah, to spend time on something, to spend time together. However, here's the interesting thing. If you add an adjective, then it's no longer spend time, it's have. So you do say, we spent time together, good, but we had a good time together. Isn't that strange? You cannot say they spent a good time. You have to say they had a good time because there's the adjective good. So it's normally spend time, but if you add an adjective like good time, a bad time, incredible time, then you have to change it to the verb to have.
When you were speaking about your friends Kerry and Estela, you used some very nice adjectives. You said both are very nice, lively, charm, and beautiful women. You need charming. Charming, encantadora. Charming. So lively, charming, and beautiful women.
One last little thing. You said we connected again when both were there. It would be more typical to say when we were both there. That's a more authentic way of saying it.
One other thing, just before we finish, Jose, you said at the end when you were speaking about the web pages, you said what page I was using. That's not common. Now, we do say web page and website. However, when we want to make it shorter, we are more likely to say site. I went to this site to check some information. I went to this site to look up a word. We would not normally use just page on its own, because when page is on its own, it's usually a page of a book. Again, thank you very much, Jose, for taking the time to record and send in your message, and very best wishes to Kerry and Estela. And I hope you're listening to this and will soon become alcoholics like Jose.
Thanks to all of you.
By the way, I did have a look at Kerry's website, which looks very interesting. There's a link in the show notes that you can find at inglespodcast.com/390. And Kerry's website's called ventanasmexico.com. And if you'd like to listen to Jose's story, The Street Seller, go to inglespodcast.com/351. So perhaps, Reza, after that coincidence story, we can think of some coincidence stories of our own. Can you think of a time when something happened that was a big coincidence for you?
Yes, I'm going to call it my story about the two Rezas from Belfast. So I'm Reza, and I come from Belfast. And believe me, I've always thought that I was the only one, or one of very few.
I think you are. One of a kind.
One of a kind, yes. And I don't know if Craig means that for positive or negative reasons, but he may be right. But something very interesting happened to my friend Gloria. Well, I could say it happened to her or happened to me, the coincidence. So let me tell you a little bit of background. Gloria, who I've known for many years, is from a village in Badajoz, Extremadura. If you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you might know that I lived in Extremadura in my very first year in Spain, but in Cáceres, the other province of Extremadura. So I shared a flat, and Gloria was one of the people who shared the flat with me. She was one of my flatmates, and we've been friends ever since. Now, Gloria speaks good English, much better than it was 25 years ago. She keeps getting better all the time. But even then, she spoke pretty good English, but she wanted to improve. So she decided, since she had met me and we'd become friends, to go and live in Belfast. Partly, I guess, because she knew me there. She also knew another guy, I should mention, called Julian, who would later become her husband, by the way.
Really?
Yes, Julian's a very good friend of mine, and I got them together. I introduced them to each other, and I predicted that they would become a couple and they'd be married for 20 years. So it was a pretty good prediction. Yeah, before they even met each other. Before they met each other, I predicted they would become a couple, and they're married.
Maybe you should start a dating website.
Well, what about that, eh? Before people have even met, that's not bad, is it?
Pretty good.
Okay, so she came because I was there and Julian there. To be honest, probably because Julian was there, let's be honest, her future husband. But anyway, she knew both of us. So she didn't know anybody else before she got there. Then she got to Belfast and she got a job working in a pizza takeaway. And can you believe it? That her boss, the guy who owned the pizza place, was called Reza. So she knew me and Julian before she arrived. She met about 2 or 3 other people. That's it, in the first couple of months. And one of them was also called Reza, the boss in her pizza takeaway. The chances of that are just minuscule.
So there aren't many Rezas in Belfast.
So let me give you the facts or the statistics just to show you with actual numbers. Until that time, I had never met one single Reza in Belfast. I was the only one that I knew of. And since then, I have also never met one. So this Reza, which Gloria met because he became her boss, he's the only Reza I've ever met in Belfast. I'm the only other one that I know of. So Gloria comes from a village in Badajoz to Belfast, and she knows about 6 people, right? And 2 of them are called Reza. What are the chances of that? They're minuscule. I had never even met another Reza.
I thought that Reza was a very common name for Muslims.
Yes, because my father was born in India.
So is there not a big Muslim community in Belfast?
Not very big, no, but significant, I guess. But this boss of hers, Reza, the pizza takeaway guy, Reza, his family were Iranian. In Iran, it is a very common name.
Right.
You also get Rezas in India, places like that, Pakistan, Iraq, Afghanistan, that kind of area in general. Mm-hmm. But it's especially common in Iran. And the pizza takeaway owner was Iranian. So I met him just once through Gloria. Thanks to Gloria, I met another Reza on one and only one occasion in my life. So the coincidence is that Gloria should have met 2 Rezas from Belfast when even people that I know who have lived there all their lives have never met another one except me. Wow. And I would imagine that most people have never met even one in Belfast. So that's a weird coincidence.
What a coincidence.
What a coincidence.
Definitely weird.
Craig, I bet you've got loads of good coincidence stories to tell, but one I'm thinking of involves something that we both have in common. Is that the one you're thinking of talking about?
Perhaps. I've actually thought of 2.
Did the story happen in Venezuela?
One of them did.
Then I think I know what it is, if I recall.
Okay, let's see. I may have told this on the podcast before, but in 2008, my wife and I travelled to Venezuela and had a lovely holiday there. And we went to visit a place called Coro. Coro, which is a national park in Venezuela. It's a very beautiful area. And we decided to take a one-day tour, an excursion to see the area. So in the morning after breakfast, we met at a particular place, and the driver and our guide got out of his car, and we were in a group of 6 or 8 tourists. And of course, as is usual in this kind of situation, he said hello, he introduced himself, and he said, okay, let's get to know each other. Can you tell me your name and where you're from? So we went round the group. There was a German couple, someone from France. Then my wife is from Spain. She introduced herself. And then I said, hi, I'm Craig. I'm originally from the UK, but now I live in Valencia, Spain with my wife. And the guide looked at me and he said, are you Craig from La Mansión del Inglés? He recognized my voice from the audios I recorded in 2001 or 2002 that are on the Mansión Inglés website. And it was such a coincidence because he'd been listening to the website and suddenly there's this tourist there and he recognized the voice in the middle of Venezuela. And that really amazed me that I'd got that far.
I love that story. Craig had told me that story before, and I find it really, really, really uplifting to know that all the work that Craig's done, he can see that it really is getting somewhere. I mean, he was in a very far away country in the world and somebody recognized him from his voice. That's amazing. And somebody who'd learned English partly through Craig's voice identifies him, you know, in a continent where there's several 100 million people through his voice.
Yeah, because we're here, Reza and I, recording in a small flat in Valencia and speaking into microphones, looking at each other across the desk and thinking, hello, is anyone there? Hello, is this on? Is anyone listening? And suddenly you travel to the other side of the world and you meet someone who recognizes your voice. I think and it happened, a similar thing happened in Chile in 2002 in a place called La Serena. Again, I was on holiday with my wife and we took another excursion. We went on a trek, and the guy who drove the minibus, who was also the tour guide, we started speaking and talking. And we know, what do you do? I teach English. Oh, really? You know, blah, 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 blah. And then when I said I write material for La Mansión del Inglés, he had just finished his thesis on web pages that teach English. And he'd been studying the Mansión Inglés as part of his thesis for internet resources for learning English. And then I was speaking to him in the middle of Chile.
What an incredible coincidence.
That's the power of the internet. What a coincidence.
I love it when that type of thing happens.
And now it's your turn to practice your English. Do you have a coincidence that you would like to share with us? If you do, we would love to hear it. Reza, how can people send us their voice messages?
You can record your voice and send it to us. All you got to do is follow the link in the show notes, if you like, to speakpipe.com/English podcast and record your voice and send it to us.
Or if you prefer, you can reach us by email. Send us an email to me, Craig, Craig, at inglespodcast.com, or to Reza at belfastreza@gmail.com.
Craig mentioned earlier about the work he's done with the Mansión Inglés. Apart from this podcast, there's all that material, which you can find online if you go to the online store. So go to store, that's STORE, store, which is the American way of saying shop, store.mansioningles.net.
We're recording this podcast in November 2021, and we're having a special promotion for Black Friday and Cyber Monday on all of our courses. So on the 26th, 27th, 28th and 29th of November 2021, you can get 50% off only for those 4 days, but 50% off all of the courses at store.mansioningles.net.
Speaking of money, thanks very much for those people who have voluntarily donated money to us through the Patreon scheme. That's Patreon. And for as little as $1.20 per month, the 20 cents is to cover the VAT, the value added tax. For $1.20, you get instant access to recent audio transcriptions as a way of saying thanks. If you're interested, go to patreon.com/inglespodcast.
Unfortunately, we don't have time to thank everybody individually for supporting us on Patreon, but we will say hi and thank you to our latest Patreon supporters who have joined us recently. They are David Santana Rubiales, thank you, Andres Santana, Manuel Macho, Maria Teresa Moreno Garcia, Mario Tagle, Alberto Valesco Niña, Maria Alcantara Vargas, Roberto Massini, and Marivi. Thank you very much, all of you.
Thanks. So, to wrap it up for this week, let us give you an idea of our next podcast. What have we got coming up in the next episode, Craig?
On next week's podcast, we have part 8 in our very popular series of common colloquial expressions. So listen to the podcast next week. You'll learn 8 very common colloquial English expressions. Thank you very much for listening this week. If you did enjoy the podcast, please tell your friends so that more people can listen. And until next time, have a wonderful week. It's goodbye from me.
And it's bye-bye from me.
The music in this podcast is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later.